Every morning around 8 AM, Priest Vildas leaves the Riverville Temple. He takes a stroll through the market, complaining about a novice.
It's always the same with these novices.
Then proceeds downhill, looking around, enjoying the fresh air. Until he reaches the shrine behind Marek's farm. There he prays and takes care of the shrine for about 2 hours, before returning to Riverville. He cleans around, replaces the candles, then prays a bit more. No secret, no mystery. Or so I thought, when I recorded the scenes for my first Enderal short. But when I put it all together, I just couldn't publish it. There was after all something strange going on here, and I couldn't put my finger on it. Not until the previous mystery was done.
Oh, by the name of the sun!
Every morning Priest Vildas walks from the Temple of Riverville to this shrine, while the sun is slowly rising in the sky. He kneels before the altar, still in the shadow, and while he's praying, the sun makes his appearance from behind the mountain peak, shining its light on the shrine.
By the name of the sun.
A shrine that is perfectly aligned with the cardinal points, and looking to the south, the direction of the sun at its zenith in the northern hemisphere, and a symbol for its life-giving energy and fire in metaphysical tradition.
By the name of the sun.
A shrine to the highest being, as we can see from the reliefs, a divinity which was venerated as the creator of the sun and the universe, and celebrated through a cult of the sun.
By the name of the sun.
By the name of the sun.
By the name of the sun.
Is Father Vildas part of some secret cult of the sun? Is he a member of a Black Libra? Well, no, Father Vildas is just a most pious and devout priest of Malphas. And one look at similar shrines, like the one at the manor of the Aged Man, or the one at Castle Goldenford, show us that the shrines are not facing south, nor any particular direction. Similar shrines, but not the same. The top part is different. They are not copies of the Riverville shrine. However, this shrine, as many other ancient places of worship, has been rededicated to Malphas long ago, and Priest Vildas is simply following on a tradition that his predecessors had carried out for thousands of years, taking care of his shrine. A daily routine which was probably a tradition in Pyrean times as well. An Ishian priest would come here from the temple in Riverville, an Ishian temple, and take care of his shrine just as Priest Vildas does.
By the name of the sun.
By the name of the sun.
By the name of the sun.
And in many other times, for countless cycles all the way back to the Fire People, the civilization created by the Aged Man, who built this shrine in the first place. Because the pillars and frieze of these shrines are actually in their style, the same style of the old temple in the Frostcliff Mountains, and the ruins under the Isle of Kor.
By the name of the sun.
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 This small scene in itself is a pattern that repeats through the cycles. What is the cycle? The dictionary definition of cycle is a series of events that are regularly repeated in the same order. There is the cycle of night and day, the cycle of rain and evaporation, the cycle of the seasons, and so on and so on. But these are natural cycles, nothing like the cycle, that does not seem so natural after all. And it also does not seem a series of specific events, but more patterns of events, and also characters, traditions, ways of life, forms of government, and even manners of speech. We hear characters from different ages and cultures all using the same expression, including our companions.
By the name of the sun, it's strange to talk about it like this.
We even hear variations of it.
Sun be praised.
But thank the sun, that fisherwoman over there took us in.
Jespar, you're breaking the flow here.
By the name of the sun.
That's better. The expression is not used only by religious characters like Alia, but also by Jespar, who does not care about religion at all. Even our character uses the expression in a possible line to Adila, Jespar's sister.
What? Who are you?
How can it be that civilizations far apart use the same expression? It seems that one of the repeating patterns is that a theocracy always rises to power and takes the sun as its symbol, influencing in turn common speech.
I thought so.
The places of worship of the previous theocracy are converted to places of worship for the new theocracy, and that contributes to the adoption of the same symbolism. But I think there's more. There's always more. And since we discovered quite the details about previous cycles and civilizations, it's time to put it all on a map, a timeline of the world of Vin. The oldest civilization we hear about is Kadath, before the start of the cycle. Is it history or myth? That's one question to explore. The cycle begins, and many cycles later a prophet manages to survive the cleansing of this civilization and becomes the Aged Man, our second known point in time. The third is the appearance of a Black Guardian, a brilliant inventor who decides to build a giant machine to transfer his conscience, and so escapes the cleansing of his people. Then we have the ancient Starlings, a small group of mages and scientists from the civilization of the Yalan Rashe that creates a city in the sky and so avoids the cleansing. Ending with the Pyrean cycle and then our cycle. I think there is a clear consideration to make here. There are people who survive the cycles, and that may have some impact on the culture of new civilizations. But also the survivors, although they all become silent observers of the cycle, in some way modify its course. It can be in a direct way, like the aged man taking care of the world of the dead until someone comes to reclaim it, or indirect, like the presence of a Black Guardian spawning legends through the eras.
The Akarians called me the god of death, the Moonskin people, the warden of dreams, the Pyreans, the demon of the deep.
These survivors don't break the cycle but become part of it, forming new repeating patterns, new cycles inside the cycles. And that's what I like to show, while we take a better look at these points in history, starting with our cycle. We know that each cycle is divided into ages. A first civilization blossoms and falls, destroyed by a cataclysm. For us it was the Age of Asâtoron, for the Pyreans it was the Age of the Giants. Then a second civilization rises and falls, destroyed by the cleansing. For us it was the Age of the Lightborn, for the Pyreans it was the Age of the Sunpriest. We know that Lightborn, Asâtoron and Sunpriest were all theocracies. It's easy to imagine the giants were too, that they were revered as gods by the rest of the population. We know almost nothing about their time, but we are in a cycle, and things should have gone similar in our first age. It's time to read from the path. Tome 1, The Chaos, verse 1. Long ago, while the world was still unriven, it was called Pangora. Pangora was great and mighty, and reached from Kurenkile to Enderal. But all life faded away as it was under no man's reign, and ruins were all that remained of the old ones, the Pyreans. And so it would have remained if Asâtoron had not come into being, the first Eterna, the scourge of the ash, the malevolent sovereign of those early days. Verse 2. In the first centuries, Asâtoron roamed Pangora alone and shaped the world to his liking. However, he was cruel and heartless, and thirsted after pain and suffering. He created two men, one from ash and one from his own blood. The blood men he called Eterna, for he gifted them with longevity and magical power. The men of ash were weak and ephemeral, and were created by Asâtoron to serve not just the Eterna, but Asâtoron himself, who stood above all things. Verse 3. Under the scourge of Asâtoron and his servants, the Ashmen erected buildings and cities. Great was the suffering the Ashmen had to endure. Yet with each passing year, Asâtoron's vile madness grew, until his hatred began to spread not only to the Ashmen, but also to his own kin, the Eterna. And so it came to pass that he ordered the death of all life, disgruntled by his own creation. From his fingertips flew lightning bolts, which destroyed palaces and temples alike. and everyone who looked upon his countenance became consumed by madness and thrust a sword into his neighbor's breast, and then his own. So it was that the Ashmen and Eterna perished, until no more than a few hundred remained. Verse 4. All were destined to die, as surely they would have, but the sky broke open first and a star, gigantic and engulfed in flames, blazed down from the heavens. It shattered Pangora into 6 large parts and numerous splinters, and so then was created, the world in which we live today. He who claims to know of Asâtoron's destiny is a liar, as he was never seen again. Verse 5. Tired of war, the few remaining Ashmen and Eterna scattered across the continents. The grudge harbored by those born from Ash against the long-lived Eterna was great. However, the weariness and exhaustion after Asâtoron's bloody rage was even greater. So the Ashmen blended with the Eterna, and their blood became impure. The tips of their ears shrunk, and their longevity shortened to little more than a century. Even their gift of magic was extinguished, and became a shadow of what Asâtoron had bestowed upon them. Verse 6. A new people of short stature emerged from the debris of the fallen star and called themselves Starlings. The second age had commenced. The Pyreans succumbed to the cleansing. Our cycle starts, and then Asâtoron, the first Eterna, mysteriously comes into being. And he creates such people in Eterna. Humans do not just evolve from simple life in our cycle, so probably they didn't in previous cycles either. Asâtoron creates a mighty empire, but then he goes mad and starts killing first the Ashmen, initiating a civil war, and then the Eterna too. Do you see it? The cycle in the cycle. The first age doesn't go much differently than the second age, ending in civil war, madness, and then total annihilation. Okay, not total. Some survivors emerge from the ruins of a previous civilization and a new empire rises. But the pattern is the same pattern shown in the paintings of the Course of Empire by Thomas Cole, that probably inspired the reliefs in the Star City. Even the setting looks like the King's Bay, and the cliff of the Sun Temple looking over it. And if the pattern is the same, twice repeated each cycle, maybe Asâtoron himself was a survivor of the Pyrean cleansing. Not the Pyrean prophet. No prophet ever survived the search of the Numinos during the life of the Black Guardian. But maybe just a powerful mage who understood more about the beacon. And when he understood he could not change the nature of humanity, and tried to reset his creation. Do I have anything to support these theories? Nothing at all. But it's also not why we read these verses. A new people of short stature emerged from the debris of the fallen star and called themselves Starlings. The second age had commenced.
Hey, you there! Yes, you! Can you spare a moment for him? He would be very grateful. Well, he, Kermai Kazor Tatakajape. Your help. Tell him, do you have good eyes? Good, very good. Let him cut to the chase. He is in dire need of eggs. Lots of eggs. And he wants you to help him. A half-starling, yes. But unfortunately, he's not from Anku, if that's what you would have asked next. Which is something he really regrets. This world, it's so dirty, so loud. But, well, what can you do? One is what one is. Oh, that's hard to explain. He doubts you would understand. But it has to do with our lost home, the Star City. Yes, the place we Starlings come from, and where we are destined to return to eventually. Don't you know the stories? There's a city far up in the sky, and all the worldly suffering doesn't exist there. But this is no place to talk about that. There are books which could explain our prophecies a lot better than he ever could.
books with ancient prophecies, and of course they are nowhere to be found. The Starlings all believe in these prophecies and feel a longing to go back to the stars. They do not descend from the Ash people and the Eterna that Asâtoron created, but they have been mixing with them for millennia, so it's more accurate to speak of half Starlings, as Kurmai tells us. They have pointy ears, reddish eyes, lower stature than the other inhabitants of Vin, and they're experts in mechanics, crystals and complicated technology. Their capital, Anku, is an underground city in Nerim, but even that is for them a temporary place, as what they really long for is to return to the Star City.
Father Eurolai, Father Jotanax, Father Ragimon, he is here, and he has found you, just as your prophecy foretold. Now open the gates!
Oh my. I sense drama.
By the stars! Why do you punish him with silence? He found you. He fulfilled your prophecy. So let him inside. No. No, 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 no. This isn't happening. This isn't happening.
Kurmai.
Yes. Yes, he is here. He is sorry, Magistra. It was a mistake to come here. This place is dead, and the ancient fathers died with it.
Very poetic, pal, but now you're overdoing it. Who says they're dead? Maybe your ancient fathers just left for someplace else.
Yes, I'm sure they did.
Look, I am sorry this place isn't what you had hoped it would be. I really am. But Dalveric is right. You shouldn't jump to conclusions, and despair won't help you either. We should inspect this place before deciding anything, don't you agree?
Yes, we should really inspect this place, starting with the emblems on the gate, which I think symbolize Father Eurolai, Father Jotanax and Father Ragimon, the leaders of the ancient Starlings as described by the fabled prophecies. 3 leaders, just like the Pyreans. I wonder how many are the leaders of the Black Libra, and I suspect 3. Impossible questions apart, we find no corpses in the Star City, except for this one in the courtyard, a skeleton which doesn't even look Starling, because it should be smaller. Maybe someone else found their way up here. However, the absence of human remains means the Star people didn't die, they disappeared somewhere. Also, we find their banners, and I cannot help but see a stylized version of the Eye of the Sun. But we are in the Star City, so it's probably a star, which in the end is what the sun is. I think given these few details, we can imagine that the Yalan Rashe were actually in origin a theocracy too, and though the Star City might have been built with the best intentions, in time it became an oppressive regime as well. There are defensive machines in the Star City, weapons, that do not match the image of utopia the Starlings have in mind.
Well, it seems like the ancient Starlings weren't as peaceful as they were made out to be after all. What kind of utopia needs these kinds of killing machines around? I wonder how these things work. They move, but without any trace of magic. That's just scary.
How does this help us? It doesn't really, because we only get the rest of the story from the Black Guardian.
The Starlings, in their time, were called the Yalam Rashe. And yes, they manipulated the game in their favor. Their goals were similar to mine when I created the Goliath. They were a small circle of highly intelligent craftsmen and mages. And just like myself, they did not think the cycle could be won by the beacon alone. So by unknown means, they fled into the sky and created something that protected their city from the cleansing. Yes, but knowledge about their history is sparse, since the Star City was almost beyond the reach of my eye. But I know that its first centuries were glorious. The Yalam Rashe lived in harmony, and their society was the pinnacle of all that mankind could be. With time, however, their population grew. They became too numerous for their small city, and so they invented their Golden Rules, which were supposed to control their growth. Having children was regulated now, and those who were found guilty of a crime were punished heavily. The worst sentence was being exiled. The convicted were robbed of their memories and sent back to Earth. This is where the Starlings of your world come from, do you see? And this is why they all feel this longing to return to a far distant place in the stars. It is an ancestral memory. I do not know. As I said, my knowledge about the Starlings was always limited. All I do know is that one day they were gone. I could not feel them anymore. By that time, their society had become but a shadow of what it once was. But whether they destroyed themselves or left for someplace else, I will never find out.
The Black Guardian is a liar, and a terrible one at that. The thousands and thousands of years in isolation certainly had a toll, and is missing more than a few screws. When we mention that we almost died in the Star City, he says,
Yes, because that old Starling did harm to the city by trying to destroy a crystal. That awoke the Guardians, but they are asleep now. I can feel it. You would be safe, believe me.
Yeah, don't believe him. He can perfectly see what happens in the Star City and the rest of Vin. I didn't even notice that Kurmai actually attacks the crystal with a mace.
They will understand.
To arms.
But the Black Guardian saw it all. He just doesn't want to tell us because it would be against his interest, convincing us, but mostly himself, that becoming a god for the new humanity is the right thing to do.
By the prophet's ass!
Forgive him. It has to be done.
However, between the lies, the Black Guardian also tells us something that I tend to believe. The Yalan Rashe developed as a civilization here on Vin during the second age of their cycle. Some of them fled into the Star City and created a protection against the beacon, more on this later, and became the Star People. The first centuries were a utopia, but the population grew too large for the Star City, and they started erasing people's memory and exiling them to Vin, already in their first cycle as Star People. These exiled people living on Vin are the ones we call Starlings, and some of them have been living on Vin already in these cycles in between. But the overpopulation problem only became worse with time, and that makes me think that only few cycles pass between the cycle of the Yalan Rashe and ours, because the Star People only finally disappear in our time. How do we know that? Because of what happens in our first age.
Prophet, there's good news. We were able to decipher the Starlings' maps, and we now know where to find the City of 1,000 Floods. Sharon was just about to explain. Sharon?
Yes. I suppose you already know that Vin hasn't always been like it is now. In the time of the Pyreans, it was one big continent, which they called Pangora. Only the Starfall in the era of Asâtoron's madness split it apart. In other words, the Pyreans dominated the entire world as it was back then. It was a world empire.
The continents, as we see them on the map behind Yuslan, were one large continent during the Age of Asâmpris and during the Age of Asâtoron. Is the Starfall, the event that ended the reign of Asâtoron, that split Pangora into what we see now. A star that fell from the sky, and from its debris emerged the Starlings. This is the last application of the Golden Rules. The Star People exile most of their own citizens, after erasing their memories of course, and then disappear forever.
Yes?
and the vessel transporting them crashed so hard onto Vin that it broke the surface. That the Starlings emerged from the starfall is also confirmed by a loading screen tip, telling us that the culture of eccentric Starlings is recorded in the old prophecies. According to them, they originated in a faraway place among the stars. Although the first Starlings were indeed seen only after the meteorite impact, which is recorded in history as the Starfall, most scholars have dismissed these prophecies as humbug. That the meteorite was actually a transport vessel is quite implicit in the game, but clearly explained on the Shurai wiki. The real question is, was it an accident or was it on purpose? To stop Asâtoron maybe? To give their exiled brothers and sisters a chance in the new world? Nobody knows, but this is not a catastrophe that happens every cycle, and the Star City was abandoned after it, which I think tells us something about where they disappeared to. We've been discovering a lot about Transcendence lately, and honestly that was my first thought. But this investigation made me see that although the Star People were skilled craftsmen and mages, technology was their forte. And more importantly, the Star City does not have the usual statue suggesting transcendence. The only clue suggesting it would be this.
They are here! They have been here all along!
Kermai! Where by the righteous path were you?
He was a fool to bring you here! You Soilborn are too dangerous! You've always been! But he was too blinded by his dream to finally finish her and sail home.
I don't like this, Magistra.
What are you talking about, Kermai? The fact that the ancient Starlings left this city doesn't have anything to do with us.
Stop talking! Darn it, you are so ignorant! They are here, but they won't reveal themselves to us because they don't accept your presence. Because you are unworthy of them. Nonsense! Even your mightiest of magics is child's play compared to the ancient technology. He will prove his worth to them. He will show that he deserves to live among them. The Soilborn have to die, and then the Fathers will reveal themselves. But how?
This is where I usually say, of course he is possessed by a bound one, or by the High Ones. But no, Kermai just lost it. And I don't think the Star People transcend it. However, what he says does suggest a second possibility.
Yes, steel instead of flesh, energy instead of blood. Away with this useless shell and its pathetic fugacity. In Horst's body, I will live on forever. Ah, you wouldn't understand this even if you'd been my apprentice for 15 years. If it helps you, just imagine that I transfer my consciousness, my soul, into Horst's body. And by doing this, I become him. Apotheosis, that's what the scholars from Kyra call it. Man's ascent to something higher. A deity, you could say. The only logical response to current events, by the way.
Yeraid Alterowin is a Sublime but also a Starling. If a Starling had the idea, maybe the Star People up there in the sky have the same idea. But why would they? They are already protected from the cleansing, and I think from the High Ones in general. Also in that case they would talk to us, like Pathira talks to us.
This is good! This is really good!
Both Transcendence and Apotheosis don't make much sense. They did not need to wait cycles for them, they could have just done it and brought everyone along. Instead they exiled most of their population and then disappeared. One has to wonder how the Star City was actually built. Many small buildings are floating on their gears, defying gravity, but if we look beneath the main buildings, there is rock supporting the foundations. Are these orbiting asteroids? Are we in actual space? We do not know if Venus is round or flat or on top of a turtle. The globes we find around show Enderal next to Mir Aranat, but that's not the case. nobody knows what's really east of Enderal. However, the sun never goes down while we are on the Star City, which may mean it is on a circular orbit following the sun. I didn't think I would tell you so soon about Nerim, but the starships we see for the Starlings there are similar to Gertrude. They are ships with a balloon, suggesting an idea of space with air and winds. And we also see some floating islands, which are never explained, but strikingly resemble what we see in the Star City. Both the Starlings and the Age of Asâtoron are spacefaring civilizations in Nerim, and Vin is the stage for their cosmic war, which the Starlings ended by throwing their own star Waran onto Vin, the starfall that broke the continents. But the canon of Enderal is different. I think that the Yalan Rashe have flying machines and air bases in the sky when their countdown started. The cycle always ends with a civil war, and there's no time for building new settlements. They found these satellites, or maybe floating islands, because of the water flowing out, and created what evolved into the Star City in the next cycles. And that's how so many of them saved themselves from the cleansing. They were already living in the sky. Still, that's not enough. They also created something that protected them from the cleansing and the High Ones as well.
What we do know is that neither the Red Madness, the High Ones, nor the Cleansing could harm them, and that their knowledge might be the key to completing the beacon.
The cycle is not natural, there's a machine at its core, and if there is someone who could have understood it, it was the Yalan Rashe. But they also understood that Vin is a cursed planet, and I think they used their time to find another planet. The Yalan Rashe always had a knack for flying and starships, before living in the Star City. And that's the real clue about the disappearance of the Star People, more straightforward than all our speculations. The Star City is not just missing people or their bodies, it's missing the starships. No small ones, no big ones, nothing at all. The Star People flew away on every ship they had. Still, not everyone could fit, so they erased the memory of more than half the population, dropped them onto Vin, and left for the stars. Mystery solved, yes, but all of this is not what's really important about the Star People, it's just our lead.
Well, let's say we have a lead to a place where we could find a lead. But let me start at the beginning. While you were sleeping, someone tried to break into the storehouse of the garrison, a Starling named Kamai. You have? That's good, then he might trust you. Well, brace yourself. He said he was looking for Shadow Steel, because he's been working on a starship for 2 decades now. He wants to use it to find the forgotten homeland of his people. Yes, doesn't it ring a bell? The Star People believe that their ancestors were born in a forgotten place among the stars. A place without war or hunger, where everyone lives in perfect harmony. All the technology, all the machines that we owe to them were invented to help them get back to this place. A very nostalgic idea, it really is, but unfortunately, a lot of Star People have died in that quest. Their starships have crashed, or they simply disappeared. Up until now, no one has ever found the Star City. Kumai, however, claims that he can do it. Well, bear with me. At first, of course, we all considered him insane. He was begging and pleading and insisting that he was just an inch from finishing his ship, and that it really could get him to the Star City. Well, unlike the others, the Grandmaster listened to him, and he ordered the scouts in Duneville to look for the cave where he claimed his workshop was. And you won't believe it, but they found out 2 things. First of all, the ship really does exist. And secondly, he says he used ancient Starling plans to construct the ship, which were handed down for generations in Anku, the Starling city on Nerim. We had a look at them. They look very similar to the plans we used to construct the beacon. Well, either that, or the ones who created the beacon also helped the Ancient Fathers build the Star City. There's no way to know for sure, but either way, what it does mean is that the Ancient Fathers must have known about the cycle, and therefore about the High Ones and the cleansing.
Yeah, Lexil, we know all that. Let's go back to the bomb you dropped. The plans for Gertrude, Kurmai's starship, as well as Agnot and other Starling technology, come from the Star City, were plants that the Starlings exiled from the Star City smuggled with themselves. And these plants, handed down for generations, are very similar to the plants for the beacon. So either the Star People created the beacon, which they didn't because the cycle is older than them, or the ones who created the beacon helped them create the Star City. Well, that's an interesting point, Lexil. What we all notice in the Star City is that it uses the same style of some Pyrean ruins, the Dilgar ruins. That's because the Dilgar found the ruins of the Yalan Rashe on Vin, studied their machines and adopted their style. Every civilization takes the place of the previous ones and inherits something from them, but this knowledge of ancient technology skips a few cycles, because some civilizations, like ours, don't go explore the ruins. So the Dilgar learned it from the ruins of the Yalan Rashe, and the Yalan Rashe possibly from the ruins of the civilization of the Black Guardian, because the technology is obviously the same, handed down through the cycles, all the way from the civilization which created the beacon, or the Ishan legends called the Kadathers of the Golden City. But before we get to Kadath, there are some other civilizations we need to talk about. The Black Guardian comes from a cycle before the Star People. He has seen their rise and fall, as well as many other empires. He does not tell us anything about the origin of his technology, but we can make our own observations. His body has a very Starling look, with a crystalline structure protecting the torso. There is also a gem, a ruby looks like, under his water coffin. Two generators power the Goliath, the generators we need to destroy to defeat him. Attached with pipes there are also these coffins, from which many creatures emerge to fight us, the helpers of the Black Guardian, a parallel to the mechanical helpers of Kurmai. But these look like harps and are named flesh constructs. They are artificial creatures, generated by the machines of the Black Guardian, and infused with life, a parallel to the flesh puppets of the old temple, but also to the Father infusing life into artificial bodies. But the Black Guardian achieved all this with technology, a very advanced technology. The flesh constructs are being generated extremely fast, and it is unclear to me why the Black Guardian does not use them to complete his body, or to drag someone down from the surface. Maybe he has limited control on them. Which raises an interesting question about the origin of harps. Maybe they were created as servants by the civilization from which the Black Guardian came, and became free when they succumbed to the cleansing. Or maybe this is just a case of asset reuse, because the same model is used for the Aura Thief that we need to defeat in the quest Bad Vibrations, and we should imagine something else in place of harps. It's very confusing. Of all of this, the Black Guardian tells us absolutely nothing, but he does tell us many important things about the cycle, and some about the beacon itself.
I myself do not know everything about the High Ones. Only that they are part of something we call the cycle. The civilization arises and blossoms, and then, always at the same stage of their development, the High Ones appear, and with them, the Red Madness. So why is this, you ask? It is simple. The High Ones alone cannot make the cleansing happen. Only a human can, with the beacon. My knowledge about it is as limited as my knowledge about the cycle. It has existed since the beginning of time, and despite what you might now believe, the ancient writings about it are true. Lit by the ones who carry the Numenos, it can banish the High Ones once and for all, but it can also destroy us.
There is of course more to his speech, but the Black Guardian goes on for longer than an hour.
Yes, it is hard to put into words.
And for now we have what we need. The beacon exists from the beginning of time, since Kadath, and each civilization falls when reaching the same stage of their development, when they are ripe for harvest. It's not enough to find the plants of a beacon, the Holy Order also needs to understand them, and to be able to build one.
Sharim, how long will the reconstruction take?
Well, that depends on how many Pyrean mechanics you have on hand that can help us decipher these plans. Just think for once, Aranthiel. How are we supposed to give you an estimation if we don't even know what the finished machine is supposed to look like?
We will get to work right away, Grandmaster. But in any case, we're going to need a lot of steel and Pyrean crystals.
You will get them. Now, get to work.
The technology of the beacon is very advanced, and each civilization needs to be at the right moment of their development. If the clock starts ticking too early, there is the possibility they won't even be able to build a beacon. Too late, and they might understand too much of the beacon, find a countermeasure like the Star People did. And the Star People were not even the first to find a shield. The Aged Man also clearly survives through the cycles. And the Aged Man is also our previous point in the timeline, before the Pyreans, before the Star People, before the Black Guardian. A prophet who chose for a brand new world and created a new civilization, which I call the Fire People for lack of a name in the game. Names are important, they help us understand, and I think this was a lucky one. The Fire People are the ones that created the living temple of the Black Libra, and the other bastions of the Black Libra around the world. But we also found their ruins under the Isle of Kor, and their pillars and statues sparse in Pyrean ruins. All in the same unique style, the same style of the shrine behind Marek's farm, and the other shrines, which I think go back all the way to that time, as well as the dark statue with glyphs. The statue symbolizing the path of transcendence, and loyalty because of Clavicus Vae's dog, the statue of death, also found in Silvergrow, and the ugly statue, the same seen in the Sanctum of the Aged Man. The statue I think symbolizes knowledge of the cycle, mostly because it's the only statue in the Star City, and we find it just before the Tower of Memories, which contains the history of previous cycles. But I actually think this statue is even older than the Fire People, older than Gajus. I think it might come all the way back from Kadath. Why? Because it reminds me of the statues of the mother goddesses of antiquity, specifically the Venus of Willendorf, an image of abundance and fertility. But this statue is ugly, there's no other way to say it. There is prosperity, there is abundance, but it's horrible, it's terrifying, and that reminds me of the legend of Kadath. However, there's one more thing about this statue. As other art in Enderal, it is a model of a real-life statue, a statue of Rangda, the demon queen of witches in Balinese mythology. Not this specific statue, there are many representations of Rangda, and you'll see an incredibly similar one in a link in description. But the various statues share the visual elements of Rangda, like the big fangs and bulging eyes. Rangda is one of the two main characters in the ritualistic Baron dance, the other being Barong, the king of spirits, representing light and good, while Rangda, eater of children, represents of course darkness and evil. The dance mimics their battle, which is won by Barong, but Rangda reincarnates and Barong has to fight her again, in an eternal cycle. I don't know if Shurai knew the story, maybe they just found the statue interesting when they saw the 3D model, which is still found online. But I like it, and I wonder if any fan of Enderal ever visited Bali and randomly stumbled into Rangda, I would have died right there. And now we have a name for this statue, Rangda, representing knowledge of the cycle, and a way to answer a further implicit question. If every civilization builds on the previous ones, adopting their styles and technology, how can we even distinguish their ruins? How do we know, for example, that the abandoned temple is not a ruin of a Yalan Rashe, that the Dilgar beacon is not their beacon? Well, there is a way. It's not what the Star City has, it's what is missing. There are no Pyrean faces, the faces of the 3 Sun Priests. Instead we find the faces of the 3 Ancient Fathers. Also, there are no Pyrean statues, no statues at all except for Rangda. The abandoned temple has Pyrean statues, and Pyrean faces are found in the room before the beacon. There are other Dilgar places, however, that do raise suspicions, places without Pyrean statues and faces, and instead full of Starling machines, like Golden Age. Actually, we do find a face here, a face of the ancient fathers. I don't think the place was built by the Yalan Rashe. There have been too many catastrophes in between for the building to survive. But I think it was built by the Dilgar on one of their ancient ruins. And the machines that are being studied here were reconstructed by the Dilgar. It is here next to the Starling face that we find one of the two copies of the same message from the leader of the Neremis expedition. The message mentioning an attack from a swarm of mosquitoes. But when Enderal came out as the Shards of Order, the papers were two different letters. The letter here was also written by expedition leader Merren, and I feel it might have been cut out by error, so I swapped the text to show you. Commander Sordan, as agreed, I send you herewith the first status report of expedition to Altiniath. The journey and the exposure were relatively easy, especially in view of the fact that we were attacked by peculiar machines when we opened the ruins. They have great similarity to typical Starling craft, but our chronicler said that they are unlike any technology that we know. Moreover, the entire ruin is filled with strange constructions, which must have been built by the same people as the machines. All this confirms your suspicions. This place must have been a research location of the Dilgar. No matter which kind of technology they are researching on, it has similarities with the beacon and must be responsible for the peculiarly sultry air in the tunnels. Currently, we are still engaged in the development and security of the ruin, but tomorrow we should be able to begin the destruction of the research. As you already said, we cannot allow that Tarantial gets hold of what the Dilgar have been researching on. Respectfully, Expedition Leader Merren. There are some incongruencies in these letters. One is Morndas 23rd, the other Morndas 26th of the same month, called the third harvest instead of the first harvest. And it's not a translation error, it's the same in German. However, Oldiniath is a research facility of the Dilgar for the technology of the Yalan Rashe, a technology that also the Neremis recognize. It has similarities with the beacon, and they don't want it to fall in the hands of the Holy Order. Another Dilgar place with a Starling origin might be Old Liguria. We enter from the Powder Desert through a typical Dilgar door, into a hall with dead adventurers and highwaymen, and the elementals who probably killed them. Through a door we enter a long descending corridor with the release common to Starling and Dilgar, and pipes traversing floors and walls, integrated in the building. More elementals defend the corridor, which ends in an open ceiling cave with ancient towers looking at a strange machine in the middle. Not the Centurion, which seems to be protecting the place, but the machine above it, a very Starling looking machine the function of which we do not know. And a note we find here says that dead adventurers and highwaymen were interested in the machine. They were probably recruited by the Neremis, but we don't know. However, again, there are no statues nor faces, even though there would be perfect spots for them. Maybe just this cave is a ruin of the Yalan Rashe, and all Liguria was built around it to preserve it, to protect and study this very strange machine. Another place of the Yalan Rashe, this time taken over by the Ishian and by the giants before them, is probably Old Atolis, because of the face of the ancient fathers we find there, but also because our Starling capsule lands in its courtyard, maybe an ancient spaceport of the Yalan Rashe. But the Ishian architecture is different. The problem is really for the Dilgar. Where does the Starling end and the Dilgar begin? It's very difficult to navigate the ambiguity of Enderal. Of course, the Dilgar took over every place of the Yalan Rashe they could find, and Enderal uses this ambiguity to show us the influence of the past on the present. But while for Oldiniath and Old Liguria it's easy to say they were Yalan Rashe before being Dilgar, there are other places, like the manor of the aged man, that confuse me to the extreme. The manor looks just like the villa of an Enderalian noble, in the same style of Dalmercer's estate, complete with an Ishian ruin in its basement, and it makes no sense. Is Gajus adapting his house to the fashion of each cycle, or maybe is it an illusion? I think neither, and instead this may hint at the possibility that the cycle Gajus comes from was more similar to ours than expected. So much of what we discover could be just discarded as asset reuse, but I think Enderal reuses his assets very consciously to show us the repeating of a cycle, but I don't know if that's always the case. For example, the statue of the Bella from Skyrim that is found in many Pyrean buildings is also used to represent Irlanda. We see it in the name of a pocketable version. Is it just reuse, meaning that we should imagine another statue when we see this? Or did the Holy Order rededicate this image to Irlanda? I think the second one. It's like the Catholic Church transformed pagan symbols into Christian ones. But going back to Gajus, I think we should imagine the cycle in which he became a prophet, much like ours. You see, it's not just his own, and the experiences we shared, but the fact that he's alive. The only reason we get the chance to fly to the Star City is because there is a Star City to fly to. But he wasn't there at the time of Gajus, nor in all the cycles in between, so there must be an alternative. A similar place protected from the cleansing where he could escape to. Maybe the same place he goes back every time the cleansing approaches.
You? But what the heck was that? Where's the manor?
And I think since that first time he learned to recreate this protection. The same protection safeguarding the Star City and taught others, the Fire People. And I think that a group of Fire People has been surviving through the cycles, the group we know as Black Libra. We read in the account of an unknown traveler the description of a Bone Reader, the leader of a Scarab tribe, and it said, "Her hair is red and unkempt, her eyes glow like fire, but her skin is nearly snow white. She does not look at all like the other Scarab. Lishari, who has a Scarab grandmother, looks much more Scarab than her."
I know, and nah, I hardly know anything about her. Only that they were raiders and that she fled about 2 years after giving birth to me. Poor Grandpa. You should have seen how people reacted to the way I looked. Even as a kid, they always looked at me and my almond-shaped eyes as if they were expecting me to pull out a skull fetish any second and start putting curses on anyone in the vicinity.
The Bone Reader is not of Scarab blood, or only in part. Her ancestors must be outsiders, outsiders with a fire. But there are more clues, and together with Esme we find one that looks very promising, under a small statue inside Almercer's estate.
Show me. Huh. It does indeed. Looks a little like the statue down in that shrine, doesn't it? But... Wait. There's something engraved on the bottom. No idea what that's supposed to mean. Do you want to take a look?
Weird markings are engraved on the bottom of a pedestal. The runes look similar to those on the temple walls in Ostian, but don't really match.
So? Yeah, but who? Wait, the museum. Isn't there a museum in Ark? Then let's not waste any more time.
At the Museum of Ark, a place with very interesting pieces, we are told something even stranger about the runes.
Do you know a lot about artifacts?
That's my path. Why do you ask?
This. Have you ever seen such an idol before?
Show me. Ooh, interesting. These glyphs, they... That's peculiar. I first thought they were old Arazalian, but they also resemble Scaragian runes. Quite the concoction. But, yes, I think I've seen this kind of writing before, on another exhibit.
The exhibit is the stone tablet from Castle Blickstar, the place where we hear the story of Kadath, a castle built on an Ishan ruin, and this piece is clearly a Pyrean relic, because of the Pyrean face. The sign says, "Fragments and finds of an old civilization, salvaged from deep ruins. They remind us of bygone times in which they were made from soft stone with effort and skill." Annotation: the crystals grew only after the finds were placed here. It seems as if they are taking the luminosity and vitality from the stone tablet, telling us that the tablet is a bound object, or comes from a living temple, Castle Blixstar. But the sign does not say the tablet is Pyrean, and neither Esme, our character, nor the curator of the museum recognize the language as Pyrean. Instead it resembles runes of the temple of the creator in Ostian, Old Arasalian, and Scaragian runes. Well, it would seem logical that the current languages of Vin evolved from Eterna, since that was the language of the first age. But then other languages, even Enderalian, would have the same roots. Instead, these three specific languages are mentioned, languages associated with suspicious pagan cults. Yes, I'm suggesting that the similarity between these languages is that they have been influenced by the same ancient language, the language of the Black Libra, and that the Black Libra survives through the cleansings, in a way not dissimilar from the Star People, and mixes with the new civilizations, bringing fire in their blood, and influencing the culture of each cycle. What was the secret of the Pyreans? My life with the Scarag, the pride of the Arasalian. What an interesting collection the aged man has, almost like he's tracking the progress of something more than the cycle. But this is not another Black Libra video, although they are very relevant to the cycle, but as an anomaly that helps humanity progress to the next level of the cycle, like the Black Guardian and the Star People. Without the Black Guardian we could decide on our own to fly to the Star City, but I don't think we would. The Black Guardian tells us we are immortal. Without that interaction, flying to the Star City just means delaying our death. It's because the Black Guardian tells us we could teach a new humanity that we think, in our pride, that is a viable option. And because there is a protection in the Star City we can save ourselves. So the aged man must have met someone like the Black Guardian, and he must have found a place like the Star City. That would mean that everything from Kadath to the aged man may have gone just like in between the aged man and us. And although he might not have been the first prophet to ever save himself, he might be the first one to save himself with Kalia, find a way for her to survive, and keep living through the cycles. In order for us to have a real chance to break the cycle, many conditions must align. It's not enough to survive all the way to the ending.
Find the map and leave! But run!
And it's only because of the aged man that we know flying to the Star City will not break the cycle after all. And it's only because Gajus fled with his Kalia, with the angel, that is still alive to show us the consequences. And he does show us. The books that trigger the lift are not the only interesting ones in the studio of Gajus. He also leaves 2 copies of the same book for us to read. The Crystal Jellyfish, its physique and use in alchemy. While the condensed serum of the tentacle mixed with non-scarious carrier substance gives a poison showing the devastating effects of an intoxication 100 times faster, there is a way to work completely different wonders with this deadly serum. If the extract is mixed with pure pestle healing root and boiled at high heat for a few moments, it results in a sheer wonder-working potion, making diverse miracles possible. For instance, if the newly recovered potion is mixed with pure water, it shows a bluish shimmer and appears to take effect in a way that it wondrously conserves everything put into, even organic life. The bluish serum of the crystal jellyfish is what preserves the body of the woman in the water. Gajus leaves us the instructions in case we take the unfortunate decisions of following in his steps. Because one of the constants of the cycle is the fauna of Vin. Although animals are affected by the red madness, they are not consumed by the high ones during the cleansing, only humans are. Showing us another clear lie of the Black Guardian.
Create a new humanity. It is only a matter of time until the new turn of the cycle starts. New life will come forth. First, simple life, then human.
But I wonder how many prophets ever got the chance, how many ever got to that finish line. We could die so easily in so many moments of our adventure, and even befriending Kalia could mean our end. She is the angel, with the power of a demon, a power that might be unleashed at any moment. You see, when Kalia says,
Focus, Kalia, focus.
She's not trying to keep up with the fight. She's restraining not to go full berserk and slaughter us all.
But the moment I see blood, the smell of death, these other thoughts start invading my mind.
I wonder if any cleansing started because the angel turned demon, and someone thought using the beacon to blow up the capital was the only way to stop her. Can things go that differently? I don't know, but I think the cycle offers a lot of variation in its pattern, and a lot of flexibility for the High Ones to adapt their plan to each variation. For example, I think every cycle begins with someone appearing out of nowhere and jumpstarting humanity. A survivor of a cleansing, but rarely a prophet, at least not during the time of a Black Guardian. It is a repeating role for anyone who fits the mold, and one always ending in disaster. The fall of Asâtoron parallels the fall of Gajus, because the God Emperor of the first age is just another element of a cycle. But Asâtoron wasn't the prophet, or even a survival of a Pyrean cycle. He was the first Eterna, and the Pyreans simply do not look like the Eterna. I don't think we'll ever know where Asâtoron came from, maybe another planet, maybe another reality, but this investigation gave me a strange idea. Asâtoron was a powerful mage, and there was a civilization with powerful mages living in Vin, up in the sky. Is it possible that Asâtoron came from the Star City, a Starling whose memory wasn't wiped? Maybe the Star People did try to break the cycle, maybe Asâtoron was their attempt. And I know everyone who played Neri might be horrified at this suggestion, but if we think only of Enderal, the Starlings originated cycles ago, but they can mix with the current population. Bafira is a half-Starling. She's tall with blue eyes. She definitely has less Starling ancestors than other half-Starlings, which makes her plan quite ironic.
Lead our people back to glory? By the stars, how stupid can a person be? We are Starlings, damn it, not bloody imperialists. We live to quest, to fulfill the prophecies, not to...
So half-Starlings can look quite diverse. However, the ones with more defined Starling features, like Dalterowin, also a half-Starling as his surname is not a Starling one, don't look that different from half-Eterna characters. Starling and Eterna use the same model. If not for names and clothes, they are indistinguishable. And that is on purpose. Sure, I could have used the same model, but still make all the Starlings short and dark-haired, and the Eterna tall and fair, for example. Instead, they decided to show us they are not so different from each other, and that's also the theory of most chroniclers of Vin. The Starlings didn't come out of the Starfall, but descend from Eterna and Ash people, like the rest of Vin. Maybe the Star People tried to break the cycle, and when Asâtoron failed, they resorted to one last desperate attempt, breaking one huge constant of each cycle, the surface of Vin itself, and left. But I suspect this might be just another way for Shuri to muddle the waters, because Asâtoron wasn't just a mage, but an immortal one like the Lightborn. Maybe we're not meant to solve this mystery, there is so little information about Asâtoron. The only subtle hint I can think of is that Asâtoron is an unusual name, and the only names that remotely sound similar are those of
Father Uralai, Father Jotanax, Father Rajimon.
What instead I'm convinced of is that there is continuity between the civilizations of different cycles, otherwise the Starlings, and the Black Libra as well, would not be able to reproduce. Someone in some way always survives, and perpetuates the same humanity that has been living on Vim from the time of Kadath. And that could explain much of the repeating aspects as well, including the use of the same expressions. And it also goes along with the plans of the High Ones. They don't wait millions of years for their harvest to naturally regrow. Just like farmers, they seed the field again. The cycle is a pattern repeating in strange ways. The quest of Kurmai, the biggest egg hunt ever, is one of my favorite in Enderal.
Well, that is the part where your good eyes come into play. All you need to do is follow the movements of the birds flying above the sea here and in its vicinity. Eventually, they will return to their nests, and that's where you can find the eggs.
we look for eggs that Kurmai wants to hatch into messenger birds to use in his travel to the Star City, but it's also one of the way Enderal pushes us to look at unusual things, what could be considered just decorations like birds. And I think it's so relaxing, just look at the sky, follow a bird until it lands on the nest, then you get the eggs. One place where the quest brings us is the Farmer's Throne, a Dilgar ruin on the Farmer's Coast, something that I think was part of a bigger complex of the Grace Path in Pyrean times. It's the throne of a Dilgar monarch, the one who controlled this area of Pangora, and a favorite spot for leaf gulls nesting. But this throne is still in use today. You see, there are no kings or queens in Enderal, but there are nobles and powerful people in general administrating the territory on behalf of the Holy Order, and we read something interesting about it in the book Landscapes of Enderal, the Farmer's Coast. According to legend, the throne has stood here before humans ever set foot in this region. It is customary among the farmers to have the new landlord sworn into his holy duties here every 4 years. Landlord Borek and the other landlords of the Farmer's Coast before him were sworn into duty here at the Farmer's Throne, the same place where a cycle ago the Dilgar would crown the ruler of this region. A pattern repeating through the cycles, but one that has to do more with the theocracy of the Second Age than the influence of the High Ones.
Not exactly. Malthus designates our place in society, generally the same one our fathers and forefathers occupied. I walk the path of the erudites, and there's also the manufacturers, the sublimes, and, of course, the pathless. Within these roles we are free to choose a profession, but certain vocations that are available to an erudite are not permitted to a manufacturer, which is one path below. However, below does not mean that it is in any way inferior. Everyone on Enderal does what they do best, and who would know better than the gods what exactly that is?
The society of Enderal is paralyzed by the system of castes. Each generation just repeats the actions of the previous generation in an endless cycle, only broken by the cleansing. That is how the Lightborn keep control. The years, the decades, the centuries become all the same, predictable. That is how they protect the population from the cycle, immobilizing society, discouraging progress.
Bloody steel crabs, always in the way of progress.
Trapping the nations in a cycle inside the cycle. And at the same time, Malphas sent the first vassals to build a new capital on the same spot of the ancient Pyrean capital, giving them a chance when the inner cycle would be broken. It's probably the case that every capital of every Second Age civilization is built in exactly this spot. That's why in every culture there's a legend about the Black Guardian.
Do you hear it? Do you hear him talking to us through the depths? It's him! It's the Black Guardian!
The people down here call it the Weeping Tree. They believe that the Black Guardian, once a year, fulfills one of the wishes they write onto these notes. Superstitious nonsense, of course. They might as well send their wishes to the Blue Island Coalition.
You need to hear him screaming down below to spawn this kind of legends. One thing we definitely stop for the next cycle, although the Black Guardian is not really dead.
Dead? No, but inactive. Her consciousness is still linked to Horst, his soul, if you will. She did it. She actually did it.
The soul of the Black Guardian is still trapped inside the Goliath, and maybe someone will find it and repair it someday, if the cycle goes on and a new capital is built again here. Or more probably, a new Black Guardian will arise.
By the Guardians, it's been so long.
No, I don't think Neilak refers to the different Black Guardians in history, but I think it's funny. Funny how it all repeats, how you can almost imagine the Pyreans walking the same streets, living the same life. We can see so many interesting Asian details in Ark and around it, once we know what we're looking at. But the interesting aspect of Asian style is that it's not always so recognizable. Sometimes what we see could be much older. Under the Isle of Kor there is an ancient square of a city of the Fire People, and in the middle there is a water well, the same well that is found all around Enderal, like at the manor of Aged Man and at Castle Goldenford, and also the same model of the Wishing Wells. The wells are ancient, but how ancient? I think that just like the generic clutter of an ancient nation, they are there to suggest exactly that, the ambiguity of what we see. Was there a marketplace here in Ark at the time of the Pyreans? Fountains and wells serve an important function in markets, and the marketplace of Ark has two, probably older than the Pyreans. Maybe here from the time of the Fire People, maybe here from the time of Kadath. Because if every beacon has always been lit here, then also the first beacon that started the cycle has been lit here, the beacon of Kadath. Kadath is in legend or history, a civilization without malice, living in a golden but sterile Eden, ended in fire by the veiled woman who created suffering, death and the cycle, so that humanity would earn its happiness. Or instead, just the first civilization on Vin evolved from simple life, reaching the peak of culture and technology, and with its stagnation, trying to enter the next state of existence, from ashes to blood, from blood to liberation. These are the two options I see, with the first having the cycle and its elements, the high ones, the beacon and the blackstones created out of nowhere, from divine intervention, and the second one where the beacon is created by humans, and the cycle begins by accident or intention. And I think the truth might be something in the middle, the veiled woman pushing the odds so that someone will create the first beacon. I received many interesting suggestions about the cycle, which I'll need to tell you in the next mystery. There is too much about the cycle for just one video, but this is about Kadath. What if the emissaries are simply repeating characters from the first cleansing? What if there was conflict about building a beacon, and what we are repeating is not even the plan of the High Ones, but a simple reenactment of those ancient events? The High Ones had no creativity, it's all just a repetition, and all they are is consciences, memories of the previous civilizations. Do what you know best. The first High One, born from the cleansing of Kadath, manipulated the emissaries of the first cycle to repeat the events that brought to his own creation. What worked for Kadath, and you don't change a winning team. But here comes the real conundrum. I had many doubts about the Blackstones and their madness, if the influence of the High Ones is really behind them, or is just what the Holy Order and our character believe. For example, we ask Alia, does it help you to know what this it really is? The Blackstone and the High Ones?
Not really, no. I mean, of course, now I at least know where it comes from and that, well, that its existence isn't my fault. But still, it's there and I'll have to live with it forever. Nothing can change that.
However, it's always dialogues, opinions, and I was puzzled until I read an answer from Niklas under this Reddit post. I appreciate the discussion, and I can see why you consider this a plot hole. However, I don't share this view. The problem probably also lies in the dialogue. If I could rewrite them today, everything would feel a lot more concise and coherent. Anyway, here's the way I intended it as a writer. It's true that their madness is caused by the High Ones. It's true that they manipulate people to their ends. However, the manipulation only works because people give in to it. Think of it as a kind of catalyst for your inner demons. Yero always felt grief and guilt for his wife, even before the High Ones came along, letter 3. However, only when they infected him with their madness, this grief morphed into hatred and desperation. The same applies to Rineus. He was also broken and lonely, but the Blackstones, the High Ones, used their loneliness against him, and made him effectively kill that entire village. And so on and so forth. Yes, the High Ones manipulate us, but the only reason they can do this is because we are fragile creatures in the first place. So the Blackstones and their madness are manifestations of the High Ones, but the beacon itself needs the Blackstones to create the High Ones in the first place. What came first, the chicken or the egg? If we take Kadath literally, the issue is solved. They were created at the same time. But I don't think that's the answer. The people of Kadath created a beacon and the cycle started. Then there was a first age, then a cataclysm, then a second age, and just like us, the people of that second age go search for the beacon and the Numinos, in the ruins of Kadath. So how do we solve the dilemma? By looking at what remains from the time of Kadath, Rangda, but also its technology, the technology of the Starling.
Kurmai told me about this place. This sphere is what keeps us in the air, and it draws its energy from the water. Crystal water, that's what he called it. I just had to see it for myself.
It's really a sight. The sphere is the engine of Gertrude, and the crystal water is fuel. It feels like a kind of cold fusion going on here, and the same kind of propulsion used by Agnot, the ship crashed in the Frostcliff Mountains. The strange liquid frozen in crystal shape outside the ship is crystal water, that's why its name. And the sphere we need to recover with Pathira from Agnot is similar to what is used on Gertrude. Now I think it's strange Yerai wants the energy core of a starship using crystal water. It seems to me that he could do with one of the energy cores powering Starling spiders and centurions, which are based on just crystals. But the energy core of Agnot is the same technology, only a much more powerful version, and Yerai has modified Horst beyond a simple centurion, one that needs a lot more energy. A technology that can produce more energy than simple crystals, which is what makes this ancient technology so special.
Energy. Horst's frame might be complete, but he still lacks a source of energy. One that doesn't exhaust itself. Similar to Pyrean crystals, only much more resourceful.
The energy cores are the next step in technological evolution, based on crystals but far more advanced, and a source of infinite energy, or probably lasting very long. Crystals are instead more easily consumed, and to reach the same level of power they need to be of giant size.
By the wise hermit. What is this place, Magistra? Can you read the glyphs?
I'll try. Yes, that? Tower of Memories. That should be it. Good question. They look like energy sources, don't they? The same as the Pyreans used. And that power, it's immense.
That is the peak of technology of Kadath, easily producing humongous amounts of energy. And that is what they used to ignite the first beacon, and why the High Ones had to create the Black Stones. They are the necessary substitute for the level of technology.
What the? Fascinating. Truly fascinating. Well, exactly what we thought would happen, I'd wager. The stone connected with the beacon. And what a connection it was. I've never seen such energy, let alone felt it.
The beacon needs a huge amount of power, one that only a very advanced civilization can create, but the High Ones cannot reach that. They instead appear at the perfect moment, when a civilization is ready to create a beacon but not understand it. And yes, it's very difficult to understand, but Shurai gave us 3 beacons to compare, plus the prototype, probably more than any other civilization had. And if we look at the prototype, there are so many differences. The dictionary definition of prototype is an early sample, model, or release of a product built to test a concept or process. This prototype has a round shape, and also a structure on top, a ring of metal going into the rock, held up by beams mounted on cubist supports. And most importantly, it does not have any attachment for the black stones. Instead, on one side we find a water wheel, suggesting use of hydraulic power, and on another side a pipe connects the base to metal barrels, maybe to regulate water pressure. And next to the barrels, what looks like an energy generator, similar to the generators powering the Black Guardian. I think we're looking at a low power version of the beacon, adapted to use some different form of energy than the Black Stones, something that could be activated with less danger to study its effects, in a safe place away from the capital. Something that one can actually switch off, unlike the real beacon. The prototype is built to understand the beacon. So let's try to understand it, looking at the other beacons we were given. The Dilgar beacon also has large rings, and the supports for the black stones are missing. Only the cables feeding it energy are visible. It looks more like the prototype than our beacon and the Ishian one. Maybe because it wasn't meant to use the black stones but other types of energy, as suggested by the water wheels at the other end of this room, and the fact that the abandoned temple rests on an ancient Ishian dam. The Dilgar were experimenting with new forms of energy beyond crystals. Maybe that's why the Dilgar beacon has a different shape. It's built to use something else than the black stones, which are only found in limited number. Or maybe the supports for the black stones are just lost under the water and rocks, but looking at the beacons made me think of another great suggestion I received. The beacon we built is not the same as the first beacon of Kadath. Its design changed in time, adapted by each civilization. The people of Kadath reached a peak of technology, but they also managed to extend their life, to conquer sickness and death. That's when progress came to a stop, while the Kadathers slowly lost their appetite for life and built a beacon without black stones or numinos, that through versioning and prototyping of different civilizations evolved into what we built, a device to banish the high ones instead of creating them. And our beacon is a new version, since even the materials we use might not be the same.
What strange metal. It didn't rust at all despite all the time it's been here.
What could even explain why the Pyrean cleansing happened so much faster than ours, why the Pyreans burned in an instant, petrified in their last acts of desperation. The Pyreans were so much better at building machines than we are. But the Pyreans didn't understand the beacon, they succumbed to the cleansing. Building the prototype didn't help, building the Dilgar beacon didn't help, and building the Ishian beacon, the one that was ignited, definitely didn't help. And that's the real mystery, isn't it? Even with all their understanding of technology, the Pyreans just died. So was this all wrong? Is there no possible defense against the beacon after all? Yes, something is wrong, and the answer is in front of our eyes, in classic Enderal style. As we noticed in our previous visit to Old Dotulgrad, the workshop where we find the prototype is still under construction. Isn't it strange that the Pyreans would assemble this prototype in an unfinished building, when they have so many better equipped facilities, like Oldiniat in the Frostcliff Mountains? And if we really look at Old Dotulgrad, well, it's just a mining town, like so many mining towns that are found in modern Enderal. Not really a place to research new technology, but a place for ancient discoveries. It's in the Throstone mine that just by digging deeper, a group of crocodile bandits found all Pyrean ruins. And so many mines, quarries and caves of Enderal reveal inside Pyrean arches, walls and decorations. The same happened in Pyrean times. The workshop of Old Dotulgrad is not under construction, it's being excavated. And the prototype is not something they built, it's something they found. This is a real ruin of the ancient Starling, of the Yalan Rashe, and this is the prototype they built. What helped them find a way to defend against the energy of the beacon, to survive the cleansing up there in the Star City. And this finding led me to another unhinged theory. It's strange how the Black Guardian keeps so vague about this momentous victory in the fight against the Cycle, a group of Yalan Rashe devising a real way to counteract the cleansing energy of the beacon, and installing it in what will become the Star City. And if we think about it, it must have been people like Lishari, Constantine, Lexil, Yela, the ones trying to understand and reconstruct the beacon, our friends. What if the prophet of the Yalan Rashe didn't follow on the quest for the Numinos? What if he flew to the Star City, persuaded like others that the Emperor's way was only gonna lead them to destruction? The problem with Asâtoron is that he sounds like a prophet, but not the Pyrean prophet, and he sounds like a mage from the Star City, but wasn't just a mage. So maybe, like many other points in this investigation, he was a bit of both. The prophet of the Yalan Rashe that with his friends long dead and his city about to collapse, came back to Vin to try and change things, and created a long-living, magical version of his own people to be his companions.
Yes, that's just how it is.
Just a theory, with nothing to support it if not the complete silence of a Black Guardian about Asâtoron, and the origin of a prototype. But I think it might be time to rewrite those historical chronicles.
That's beyond me.
No, I really mean it, cause we are yet far from seeing the whole truth. It's obvious that the Pyreans didn't just decide to dig so deep underground and build a city here. They found pre-existing ruins of an ancient capital of a previous cycle. And here comes again that ambiguity, because the city of Atasan Floods doesn't have any banner, any statue, any relief. The only exception being the archway of the Pyrean temple, statues and decorations unique to this location. Enderal uses some features to show us clear attribution of specific ruins to specific civilizations, most notably the faces, representing the respective living gods. And here, in the most ancient and revered part of Pira, there is not even one. And I think that's the reason it was preserved as close as possible to the way it once was, for religious purposes. Because that's where the knowledge of the cycle started, where they began to understand that countless civilizations lived and disappeared before them, and where they found a very, very ancient beacon. Not this one, of course, but this one in the room just before, with a cross that should hold the numinous in the center, and still presenting two of the original supports for the black stones. A version that closely resembles the beacon seen in the introduction by the aged man. And I think this is the demonstration that the design of the beacon has been adapted during the cycles. What we build is not the original beacon of Kadath, but the version of the Holy Order based on the Pyrean plans, derived from the prototype of the Yalan Rashe, and who knows how many iterations there have been before. The prototype sees a version in the middle, a transition from this ancient round design to the sleek, elongated look. And I know, the presence of this round beacon opens even more questions, even more theories, but I suspect that the use of the generic Kishan style in the city of 1,000 Floods, the same used in the Sanctum of the Aged Man, might point to this beacon being even older than Gajus.
Well, finding out about the Blackstones was definitely a great step forwards, but still, we're left with a myriad of questions. Sometimes I feel pathetic, to be honest, like a child asked to understand the functioning of a Starling airship.
Yes, that describes it perfectly. And this investigation made me understand there's a reason for this confusion. What we consider elements of a cycle are instead the results of variations in the pattern. Cycles that went differently from the archetypal cycle and left a mark to this day. A pile of cumulative exceptions that seem to be the only reason we actually get a chance to make a change. If death didn't exist in Kadath, maybe as a consequence of the peak their civilization reached, everybody was immortal like a living god and life became stale. Then maybe the world of the dead itself is a creation of a later time, an invention introduced to retrieve the numinous. How would a cycle proceed without an aged man, a Black Guardian and a Star City, without Asâtoron and the Black Libra? How did the first cycle after Kadath really go? Maybe humanity never had a real chance against the High Ones. Maybe we are the first ones. The ultimate point of a cumulative effort of humanity stretched through all ages. That last exception that finally breaks the cycle. Thanks for watching, and what blessed!